Questions? Are there any? About anything from today? Ian? Nothing? Seriously? Nothing? What didn't we cover?
We didn't talk about AI and whether it's male or female, and whether that actually matters. Bearing in mind that occasionally you hear an AI voice, but very often you talk to it in writing. So
It's like a fork.
in evidence.
It's not male or female.
It depends which language you're in.
It's a mathematical computational engine based on statistics, which just happens to produce stuff we think looks like thinking. But it isn't. Doesn't know what's correct, doesn't know what's right, doesn't know what's wrong. All it knows is the most likely answer based on the input and the model it's been given, that it's got. That's what I think.
Okay.
Does anybody else have an opinion?
Oh, by the way, if you name it,
Yes.
that's odd. It's very odd if you name
Sorry.
name an AI tool.
I thought you meant your name.
A certain author has named his Claudine. He's been roundly described as being, must be really odd. You need to get out more friends.
I've got another one. Just thinking about what we've heard this afternoon, there's a certain fear on AI, on how it's going to affect us and people losing their jobs and things like that. Then we say that our youngsters are not being taught how to use AI, and then we hear that it seems to be a good idea to take computers away from them. And if you stack those all up, if you take computers away from them, then obviously they're not going to learn to use AI or get any lessons in it. So I don't see why you would develop that argument that way. I would have said they should use computers and they should be taught how to use them. That's the problem, is being taught how to use them generally. The biggest fear used to be with my youngsters, which was 40 years or so ago, was they loved playing games on the computers, and that always seemed a bit of a waste of time for them. But they still did their homework and they still got good marks. So that my only concern on computers at the time was playing games, not anything else. Thank you.
I don't think that's what we were saying. I think I was just saying that there is an argument for computers to be taken out of the education space so that they're not focused on their phones or their iPads. I think it's more just about going back to some paper and pens in the classroom, but they're always going to have, I'm going to go back to an old school term, an IT lesson, or they'll still have that embedded within the curriculum and also have access to their phones and the AI tools that we all use. I don't think it's going to be one or the other. It will just be a more blended approach so that actually children can study and have more ability to focus in the classroom. That's the current argument that's being said.
Can I just say, my dad didn't buy me any games on computers. He wouldn't do it. He didn't see the need. But what he did do was buy me computer magazines, which had games written in them. So my sister and I used to type them in BASIC. They never worked. So then he gave us the manual, and then we had to debug it. And that's probably why I'm here.
I think the issue about education is that computers are not new. I've had them since before my degree. I had them all the way through the degree. They were different. But the one thing we did during that time is we were taught fundamentals about how to do a variety of things, critical thinking. We were taught how to research. We were taught how to frame an argument. We were taught about different concepts of philosophy, about how to think about problem solving. We were taught all these things, and we did so without having a ready answer in our hands, because that's the thing what a computer provides now. It's not actually the computer that is the issue, it's the fact that if I want an answer, I can have it in seconds with no effort. there, and I suppose that's the key challenge. Is how do you teach critical thinking and research where there's effort involved in finding an answer? Because through that is how you learn. If you don't have effort, you don't really learn.
So I want to add to that too, something that we saw that we don't see as much today, I will say, but in the last decade, was companies, large companies saying, I don't care that the employee knows how to do this task. Especially if we're talking like frontline people doing installations and that kind of thing. I don't care that they know how to do it. I want them to know where to find it. So it stopped being about the understanding of how the network works, how troubleshooting works, how you do all that, and it became, can I look it up? And that's, to me, a real dumbing down. We've seen them move away from it because it didn't go well, but that just kind of adds to what Ian just said, which is you have to learn how to do the processes to really understand what happens behind that wall, what happens in the network, or any job. I mean, let's not just even use our industry. When you shortcut and go, I just want to know how to find the answer, but I don't want to know how to do the thing, we run into trouble. And I think that's what we see happening with kids in a lot of ways. When the homework is said, just find it on the internet, I want you to think about it yourself. I want you to figure it out yourself. So
I'm always aware that I've got a saying which I've used many times, and that is, in this internet age of smartphones as well, it means we're never more than a few seconds away from having an answer. And I picked those words very carefully. An answer, not the answer. And that's still the case with AI today. You can ask it questions and it will come back with an answer, but it's not the answer until it's qualified and understood and verified, because that is the important thing to know about AI tools. These large language models that interrogate large amounts of data, have it embedded in their model. They're not got any definition of correct. It doesn't exist. Correct is something, you can probably say the definition of a human is we can determine correctness. AI can't. There's no concept. It's just what's the most likely
I don't think that's entirely true.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think it's entirely true. It depends on how the AI is being put together. AIs can absolutely mark their own homework and decide whether what they have generated, if they then feed it back into themselves, logically makes sense. And they may or may not do that well, and they may do that worse a year ago to how they'll do it in a year's time. But I don't think there's anything fundamental about the maths that's under them that prevents that being a thing.
It's still coming up with a statistically likely answer,
Absolutely.
not a validated correct answer.
If I have a new intern that's joined my company and ask them to research something, I have to validate that too, because they might get it wrong. For the same reason, they only have their level of knowledge to test it against.
Yeah, but they have a level of understanding whether it's correct or not, and given the right tools they can find it, but AI never can. It's still just a mathematical equation.
It's back to the whole cut and paste that the chat set from the sky, right? You put something in, it pops something out, and you like cut and paste, I think they can hear me.
We just don't get it on video.
Cut and paste that the chap said from Sky, right? People put a prompt in, it pops out, here's your new CV, you cut and paste that in, send it off for a job. You know, you don't, if you don't read it, it could be BS.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry, we're recording that as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a number of arguments there, and I follow what you're saying.
I think it is about the people need to be given the capabilities to be able to verify and be critical about something presented in front of them, even if they don't necessarily know the answer. And that's what we're missing, is the fact that people get too reliant and use it as a crutch. The same way that back 30 years ago, my wife had problems with new graduates coming through into pharmaceutical research who basically would put all their numbers into an Excel spreadsheet, pop out an answer and say, there's your answer, and she would know from the answer that they'd missed something in the way the calculation worked within Excel. It's a different scale of calculation, but it's effectively the same thing. Those graduates back in the mid-90s didn't know an answer. They couldn't look at an answer and understand and know that it's incorrect or the wrong scale. That's one of the things I got taught. I got taught to do maths of very large numbers based upon approximations. Yeah? In fact, large amounts of my engineering background was books of approximations that were given to approximate logarithms, fluid dynamic calculations, everything. None of it was precise. It was all empirical data. And therefore we were used to understand the scale and quality of an answer. Math, you know, calculating, it's largely, you can get it wrong very easily. And if you just believe what it produces, there is a view that says more for you. You've got to be able to critically assess an answer. And I will say as well, is that if I've got a legal question or a medical question, I'm not going to rely on an AI and myself to qualify whether it's correct. You need to find an expert who has got experience and knowledge of the subject matter you wish to have queried. You can still get it wrong, but blindly wrong? No.
That's why I also think, I mean, AI will help us in some ways, but it's a help, it's a tool. As you said, a chainsaw. Which end of the chainsaw do you hold? Which end of AI do you hold? And who's controlling it? I mean, the good thing with a chainsaw is there's a button on it that says turn off. The kids, they don't look at that. They look at AI as it's an easy way to get information. I mean, we used to have to go through Encyclopedia Britannica to find out information. That was
His directory.
painful. Yeah, I mean, now we're getting into, but that was the painful way of doing it. But you had to also have the right questions for an encyclopedia. Didn't make a difference. And encyclopedias were also wrong. So all of a sudden, you've got just more data and access to more data. Everyone's saying data's king. Is data king if it's wrong? It is, because it's just wrong data. So you're sitting there looking at the wrong data, putting it forwards. Going through research at the moment, you can find research on anything you want now and get the statistics that will actually support you, madly enough, and it's wrong. So this is where the AI world needs to have some control. I mean, Ben, you put it, I use it in things that I don't really like doing, or I want to get done quickly. Yeah, but it gives you the ability to get some things done quick, but you still have to justify it, check it, make sure. And that's the hard part. Looking at some of the kids now going through equations, they don't know how to do it. They just put the answer in the phone. Solve the problem. I've got the answer. Yeah, but how did you get there? Yeah, but AI said this was the answer. My kids hate me when I say, yeah, but go through the calculations. Really? Yeah, go through them step by step. I want to see how you've done it. Because then I can check if they're using ChatGPT. I mean, it's amazing. Take a picture, get an answer. Homework done, 2 minutes. It's supposed to take an hour.
That is a problem with education, because education has to refocus on the harder part of education. It's not just validating they got the correct answers. Did they use the right methodology and approach and thought process?
And that's where, I mean, someone mentioned in Scandinavia. I live in Denmark. So the kids are being taught more pen, paper, having to go through the calculations. They hate it. In some schools, it's pure computer. Computers from 7 years old. That's frightening. They don't know how to write. They cannot write. If you see some of the text messages, if you just turn off some of their spell checker, that gets interesting. And when you put spell checker on again, it's even more interesting. Some of the words that come out of the spell checker, pretty fun. But this is where you also need that control. Does it sound like the right word? I mean, I've got kids from 9 to 26. 8 of them. The 26-year-old is completely different. His way of learning was different. The 19-year-old is studying law. He asked ChatGPT a question about testaments and it come back with a completely wrong answer. So, to your point, how do we get this and how do we get people to understand it? I mean, the discussion today, the first panel, we mentioned AI. It carries on all the way through, but it is just a tool. And it's how you use a tool. I mean, using a hammer can do multiple things. It can get a screw in. It can also break into a building. Which one was the right usage? None of them for a hammer. But again, that's how you use it. It's the same with AI. I like the idea of large language models and small language models. The small language models getting more interesting because it makes it more fun and more detailed on that area. But where's your data? Every question you ask, it's learning from your data. I mean, Dave and I got bored at IBC last year and started talking to ChatGPT and asking it certain questions and sort of Starlink, how many satellites, how do they fall down? Yeah, Starlink's amazing, you can do this, you can do that. Who's the SCTE? Oh, the SCTE is an American organisation. Then we started working on that. It's not an American organisation. But they're the things you start working on. And all of a sudden, you're teaching ChatGPT or Claude or all of them. Companies now are putting all of their data straight on. Look at this. Give me some ideas how I could make more money. That's frightening. You're putting customer data on there. So it's how we use AI. But again, we had the last session on AI. What about streaming? Is streaming going to change our world soon? How's it going to change the way we work? Not really. Is it going to change the way we watch? It already has. It's too late. Streaming, for me, streaming's already here. And now it's the next phase of streaming. So how do you get more data quicker? How do you divide the data up between you? How do you make sure you hear the final whistle in a football camp, in a football match? But that's also difficult. How do you get that when physics is also here? Enough of a little monologue. Any more questions? Do we have to start picking on people? I've got another hour of this, so come on. One at the back.
I think you add what you said really about the kids and computers. They're going to have them in the workplace. They're going to have AI in the workplace. They're going to have it at home. And like anything else that you teach children, you know, I've had lads turn up for jobs that didn't know how to use a screwdriver. They were never shown how to use one, whether that be at home or at school. They need to be shown how to use these tools. You wouldn't use a chainsaw to cut your hair or brush your teeth. It's dangerous. But so it's got its uses. And the other thing is, you know, when back in the day when you went to I say back in the day, back in the day when people went to university and they were asked to write an essay, they'd go to the library, they'd do a lot of research. They didn't take pictures of the text and stick it into a textbook and then hand it to the teacher. So there are ways of filtering and checking that people are putting the work in, are understanding the content that they're submitting. So, and the same thing as Chep said over there with it's confession time. I think we're all at our confessions today. Yeah, I've used it this week on a spreadsheet. Someone said to me, "I want. Can you give us a simpler way of selecting headings?" So I put a simple very simple spreadsheet together. My son, I was talking to him about it. He said, "Yeah, I can put that through Claude for you, and I'll make you do this, that, and the other." And what he gave me back was fantastic. And yeah, I'm not going to claim credit for it. Well, I've confessed here today on camera, but yeah. So if that's given me a far more presentable tool that could have taken me hours to make that functional, there's no harm in that. So again, application, quality assurance, QA, someone said earlier on, and validity, you know, and critical thinking around it. So used right, and again, the kids need to be given this education. The smartphone, I'm not being funny, but would you take your 9-year-old into a library and allow them to wander around the adult section or the horror section? Well, you might in Denmark, but we're traditionally it's
not even in Denmark. Don't worry.
So again, that's about taking the smartphones off of kids and that. You know, it's there are ways of filtering this stuff, and anyway, that's my cheers.
But I think you're hitting also the same things. You don't do it. You don't take them to the library and look at medicinal books on autonomy and everything weird, anatomy, looking at going into the surgeons and looking at half dissected things. You don't do that with kids. AI is a little bit the same. When you start asking it some questions, you can really get into some interesting areas.
I wouldn't just say it's the kids. In my organisation, We've had 2 people leave in the last year. One did a report for Ofcom that was just AI. He clearly didn't understand what it said. It didn't go out because other people got hold of it and made it sensible. And the other guy did a white paper, and it was just full of errors. He clearly didn't read it because he was smart enough to understand what was in there, but he didn't. And yeah, not just that, but maybe they were hiding behind other weaknesses they had, and they were using AI to cover the gaps. But then, when you look at it, you can see there are issues. So it's not just the kids.
No. But these are people you would expect to have some kind of critical thinking in place as they've got jobs. But this is also where we're losing some generations to having the ability to use AI because it saves time. I mean, humans are inherently lazy and hoarders. So inherent laziness, if I can get it done quicker, that's what I'm doing. But checking it is the problem.
Thing, actually, the best engineers are the lazy ones.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are clever enough to find the best and quickest and easiest way to do something. However, a little bit of homework for us all goes back to the use of an AI. Go to use an AI, ask it a question you know the answer to, get the answer, and then say, I'm sorry, you're wrong, and see what it does then. Because it will apologise profusely and say, I'm right, and give me another variation on the answer. Because again, it's not giving the right answer, it's just giving the most likely answer. And when in the face of you saying that's not the correct answer, it just goes, okay, I'm going to adjust my confidence limits on what the answer could be. And I randomly press the dice again and give me another answer. It doesn't know anything. It only gives the most likely answer based on a very large amount of data, and that makes it look fantastic and confident. But it's about validating, and that's about taking that fact and then trying to break it. In fact, the best logical thought process I ever had was the hypothetical approach to things, of actually state something and prove it wrong. So ask it a question and then basically kick it and actually keep kicking it until it absolutely comes out with everything you think is right or wrong. And that's what you've got to do, that's critical thinking.
I do think the onus is on us. I agree completely with what you just said about critical thinking. But you hear again and again that AI won't replace people. AI will replace people who don't understand how to best use it to maximize their work or to maximize the job at hand. So it's about what everybody said here, which is using critical thinking, which is understanding how the tool works. It's understanding your role, like your experience. The gentleman up here talked about, once you know the job and you know the experience, you understand what you're vetting when you read this stuff. But I think it's important to state that it's coming and we have to understand how to use it. And that's an important piece, is that we can't just say, I'm going to be a Luddite and I'm not using it, right? Like, that's not how it works. We have to figure out how to use it and how does it work best for each of us, because we will be left behind. You've said the kids do it quickly, that's how they're doing everything. Eventually it will catch up to a point where the info is good, the tools are great, and all of that's working. So we can't just say I refuse. We have to figure out how best to do it. I think a lot of people here have been touching on the critical thinking component and understanding your role and your job and proofing. Good God, I can't believe anybody wouldn't proof something, but then again.
It goes back, it may surprise some of you after my critical comments. I'm a very heavy user of AI. It is fantastic. It is, but it's very much like the Google search of a decade or 2 decades ago. Okay? Yeah, I could throw a query into Google and just copy and paste the first website I got off that search and just copy that into an email and send it off. That would be insane. Same thing about an AI, large language model with an expectation they've been given a researched answer. You've got to qualify it. You have to. You don't just copy and paste.
Actually, 10 years ago it would have probably been better because there were responsible.
Oh, I don't know. There's some really random stuff on the internet. There always has been.
Yeah, well, 10 years ago we didn't have sponsored links, so you would have probably been better off copy and pasting the third answer. But yeah.
It used to be the best place to hide a dead body was on the second page of a Google search. Yep. To be honest with you, you don't get any answers until the second page of the Google search.
One question, how do we get more youngsters interested in this? How do we make it, as someone said earlier, more sexy?
explain things. Because I'll be honest, I've had the same experience of other people going to people today and saying, what do you do? And the blankness on their face when they suddenly realise that Netflix doesn't magically appear in front of their eyes. And the fact that there's actually a huge load of technologists creating the technology, which is then used by artists to create content, and then that has to be captured and delivered all the way through via other technologists and operations staff, all the way so that they can actually press play on a screen. And when asked how to use it, couldn't even explain what a remote control was. And these were 14-year-olds. And yet once explained in the basic terms of that thing you use to control the television you sometimes use, that's when they start to understand it. And it is down to vocabulary and familiarity and actually realising stuff happens in this world that they don't know about. Stuff just happens. The adulting side. I think a lot of us maybe getting to the age, or haven't had age of children, get to the age of 16, 17, 18, and then you teach them about what council tax is. And how it can be right, how it can be wrong. And life, because we don't actually teach that sort of knowledge at all.
I knew about council tax when I was about 8.
Oh, well, you knew about rates then, yeah. But it is a thing that they don't have awareness, they haven't thought about it, they're not necessarily going to be thinking about it.
We were taught about it in school when I was 10.
Oh, they
It wasn't
definitely don't know
called
that.
council tax then, but
Yeah.
rates.
Rates, yeah.
Rates,
But we don't. There's not enough time to do that in a lot of schools, so they don't do that. It comes under. I think it's there's a lesson. Was it PSHE, and it generally ends up just being sex education. But they're supposed to be teaching other things like what a bank account is, what interest is, what tax is, what national insurance is, and things. Those basic things that actually. Normally we never really discovered it until we got to 16 and it suddenly was out of our pay packet and we knew in the first week what it was. But they don't necessarily get that because it's money paid into a bank. But there's lots of those sorts of things which need to be given context to teachers, and we need to get out there and speak to schools. And not just 14-year-olds either, which is where the classic STEM ambassadorship approach is taking. It's when they're 7 and 8. Because that's when they're deciding what they're doing forever in their future life, mostly.
Yeah, I mean, just adding to that, I mean, at the moment with the needs and the fact that they're looking at the education system, sort of trying to fundamentally change it. For me, I was brought up in the Netherlands and I went through the school system in the Netherlands. And that's being used as a blueprint because it's really simple. You do your sort of up to about 11, from 4 to 11, you go to school, and then after that it's secondary education, and you get a suggestion, sort of like, okay, you're gonna. There's 3 steps after that. It's the sort of the vocational, then in the middle it's sort of university-ish, and then the top end, so to speak, is based on science. So there's 3 very, very identifiable steps, and they're very different from each other. One is 4 years, one is 5 years, and one is 6 years. The 4 years typically leads into an apprenticeship and does a lot of vocational stuff, nursing, all those sort of things, nursing, plumbing, the stuff that you use your hands for, and that the other 2 are essentially just basically more academic. The middle one is teaching, teachers, and all those sort of things, and then you got your doctors, your science stuff after that, before you go to university. So that's until about 17, 18, after which you're allowed to not go to school anymore, because before that, 18, you have to be in school in some shape or form. But it's tailored to your abilities and to your interests, which is something that I think has been lacking here. But there's looking at it now, because you've got like a whole wasted part of the youth that's essentially they're indebted by 50, 60,000, and they've got a degree and they've got no chance to actually use it.
I think there's a lot of deeper analysis has to be done on it, because actually we have had that system, we threw it away. because actually it has a negative downside as well. And I think that's recognised as well in the Dutch system, that streaming at 11, which is we did it in the UK, it used to be called standard comprehensive schools, combined with technical schools, combined with grammar schools. And there are challenges with it. The problem is there's a compromise that needs to be had, because not everyone can be streamed at 11. Not everyone works well for what can be defined as 11. You shouldn't be defined as to who you will be based on when you're 11 years old, and that was the downside of that system. People were thrown to the scrap heap, so to speak, based on their attitudes at the age of 11, which is way young to actually make a decision about someone. But it's about influencing, giving a dynamic education system that responds to how someone develops. I think the question is about how to do that, and so not just doing one thing, but doing multiple things. Oh, there you go. There's an AI. That is, by the way, Google Maps is an AI, by the way, just so you know.
Female voice as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's just a voice that sounds female.
Algorithms.
Algorithms. I've got one that actually comes out northern. So that's really quite fun as well. But it's definitely not northern.
That's not a bad thing.
No.
Getting younger people into the industry and into here. At Technetics we have a scheme for internships, and we've just taken on 8 recently. We've got 2 over from Denver that have come over to our Holborn office in the UK. We've got, we sponsor people to go to Liverpool University. We give them a scholarship, internship as well. One's just gone to Spain to work with our software team, so to get them involved, but it costs money of course. But we'll benefit from it as well, because we'll get some new ideas, etc. So that works for us as a company, and it gives a few young people some good experience. How we get them into the SCTE, I don't know. Maybe if them interns that are in Holborn came to sit in this and realise what the industry is about, it might help them have a bit more of a British view, obviously, but also to help them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. In my teenage years, I can remember that the UK had a huge manufacturing base. It had a lot of industry. Most things were made in the UK, which range from radios, televisions, you name it, they were made here. I can then remember, aged about 23, 24, I moved jobs and I joined an organisation called the SCTE Institute. Now the SCTE Institute was a government-backed research institute on instrumentation in particular. And I worked there for a while as what they called a research technologist. During my time, I got a lot of extra education into things that were just theory to me, which were things like going to a company called Perkin-Elmer and playing with mass spectrometers and all the sort of chemical things that I'd always been scared of. Anyway, it just occurs to me, at that time, there was so much training going on in all fields of engineering. There were pals that I had who wanted to be train drivers and fire engine drivers and all sorts of things that they thought were exciting. But we've lost that industry base. Is that linked to the problems we've got in education these days with our youngsters? Because I know many of them are kind of lost. I spend a great deal of time with my grandchildren, exciting them in things that I know interest them, which is great. It's just a question.
Just one point on that. When the defence industry collapsed in this country in the 90s, after the Cold War,
Yeah.
there were mass redundancies. Because I came from the GEC Marconi background, and whole areas, lost those research institutes, and those people were made redundant, and they never really re-emerged. And the UK lost a lot of talent. This was places like Basildon and Colchester. They all had all the Marconi research and so on. So when the Cold War was over, this country lost a lot of research people, and you know, we moved to the sort of service sector, and all that engineering stuff sort of disappeared.
Yeah, well,
And the defence industry created a lot of.
I agree with you entirely. Out of interest or amusement, I worked for a company called Elliott Automation, which was part of the Marconi English Electric GEC group. But I came out of that, extracted myself to the Sire Institute, and then went in a different direction. But at that time, we kind of lost everything. Weinstock sold GEC in bits and pieces. Germany bought huge swathes of our industry base. And there are lots of German companies that I can look at now and think, that's where you got that from all those years ago. We gave it all away, I agree with you entirely. But is that linked now to the problem we've got with youngsters and their not really knowing what they want to do and not really being inspired?
But the defence industry created a lot of apprenticeships, right, and the graduate training schemes, and there were like 46 years of training after graduation. So, that created a base, and when people moved around, they took that knowledge. I think that's missing these days.
GC Marconi failed not because of the end of the Cold War. It failed because it chased higher margin products and markets which didn't exist, and they had no competency, and failed miserably. And they sold off the stuff that had a steady, constant, good margin business. That's why people from Germany bought it. Because at the end of the day, it was not a high margin business. It wasn't a stock market star attraction. And I think that's what we have to recognise is that failures. Every company has, every country in the world has had industries that have failed, and most of them are down to bad decision making. GE in the US also same thing. They created a situation in which they effectively became a bank, and they were highly volatilely responsive then to the banking hit in 2008. It wasn't their engineering sides that failed. It was the fact that they borrowed extensively off the back of money that was being loaned out to other people on bad risks. So there's lots of detail behind that which we have to be careful of. But in terms of where it's impacting now, I think there's an aspect of today that people don't necessarily see industry, but there's also an aspect that says they shouldn't just be staying in the UK. There's all the industry around the world. We should be dynamic to where we go across the entire world and go overseas and travel and be exposed to everything that way. And we should foster that. Because it isn't just, otherwise you could say the view that, we have industry in Taunton. Great, I'll just go to Taunton and stay in Taunton. And when the industry closes there, I'll go, oh gosh, it's bad, there's none of this particular industry in Taunton. I just get up, move and take the words out of a certain Conservative politician's mouth. Get on your bike. We did that in the 80s.
Get on your electric bike.
Yeah, we got out there, we did things. People went to South Africa, people went to Australia, people went to America. Lots of people created a lot of knowledge. A lot of the industry we've got in California is drawn and originated by people who go to California. Get up and go there. It's not about expecting to be here where you are. And that may be the excitement we can teach children about the industry. I think the best excitement I had when I was on my STEM ambassadorship thing with this school, when they're seeing these 13, 14-year-olds, is I was telling them I was going to Las Vegas the week after. All paid for. What, you do that as a job? You go to Las Vegas for a job? Yeah. Just to be honest, I wouldn't go there. Otherwise, it's a horrible place. But that's the thing. You've got to find what desire is in there, and it's not about forcing them, but it is about opening their eyes to what is and what is not. And a lot more outreach to schools. I know Harry, you've done in the past with Rise. Just lots more of it. We've got to get younger, and we've got to be talking about it more broadly so it's visible. And then we can hopefully get some more engineers, hopefully get some more media technologists, and hopefully get some more operations staff who are excited about what they do and the jobs they are. Because there are out there. There's 1 million people just sat there. Right now, 1 million 18 to 24-year-olds doing nothing. And it's not because they don't want a job. It's not because they don't have skills. They need to be trained.
Soapbox.
Get off your box. What subjects should we be discussing at the SCTE? We start looking at the plan for next year. We've already put it out, but what else should we be discussing? Any ideas? Okay.
How about neurodiversity support? Inclusive, how to support the college, how to support the young kids, how to support the 1.3 million. Some of them may be a neurodiversity, they're not able to communicate, they have the spectrum syndrome, and we need to help them somehow. If you don't go out to catch them, and they would just sitting there forever and become the 24 to 40
Year olds that have nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think neurodiversity would be quite a good topic.
I think another aspect we can see is how to translate the industry knowledge and opportunities at university level. I think most of the time youngsters also want the job opportunities, they want to be a part of exciting industry, but they just don't know how, because the JDs are so different and the curriculum is also so different. So one of the projects I definitely want to mention is I was working on a project with global leaders in the search and recommendation, and their challenge is they don't get enough youngsters to work on the metadata. So what I did is I went to the university with the presentation how these kids can actually enter the industry and watch the content and work on the metadata, which the students actually found exciting because you're watching the content and you're also working and you're getting paid also. So it was a knowledge transfer. It was a kind of showing the path to industry, and that's how we as an industry, I feel like, has a great opportunity how we can bring them together, constantly working with the seminars or university sessions, or not just taking as a one-time opportunity, but every organization, if they decide that they are going to do a 12 session in a year with 12 universities, imagine the amount of people are involved, what is the big impact they can create. It also helps not to create the job opportunities, but also fill the gap for talent shortage. I think we as industry, we definitely talk more often about these things and can create the more opportunities with this. Thank you.
One of the places that we're focusing in trying to do this very thing is with gaming people. For the first time, I think it's in the last 6 months, gaming hours surpass streaming hours. And so it's a place that is, people are excited, they're online, they think that way anyway. We've really been focusing with trying to tell the story to the gamers of how gaming got to where it is, to get them excited not about the games, but about why. And we're seeing actually some lift from that, but I do think that focusing there is an interesting focus, and you do it in schools because they're taking classes for specific types of development, but that's been a particular lane we've focused on to be very kind of surgical about it. And we are seeing just a level of interest because they have no idea how they got to where they can game the way they do. They just don't know how it was done, they just know they can do it. So getting them to be excited about maybe being part about like what's the next innovation? What can you be responsible for that will be the next trajectory? And people don't even know it exists today. It doesn't exist today. So that's for us. Would be good.
Very good. I was asked a question the other day, what's going to happen in the future? But how do you answer that question? What's streaming? How's streaming going to change? Are we just going to have contact lenses, or do we have an avatar tail we just put straight in our necks? What's going to happen? Your guess is as good as mine. And you look at them and go, yeah, but you're in the industry. I said, yeah, but that's my problem. I'm in the industry. I know the physics barriers that are stopping me doing things. You don't.
Innovation.
Innovation. Right. We've been quite through quite a bit here. The changing face of streaming. If you look where we've been today, we've travelled nearly everywhere. AI, how we get more people involved in this, where we're going, how 20 milliseconds are so important, how some people use more than one television at a time. It's normal, trust me, for some. But all of this is why we're here. We're trying to bring ourselves together. You keep looking at the industries, and it's engineers that are making these differences every day. Shaving those milliseconds down, moving things, making things more interesting. I mean, I had a discussion earlier about the Holland strip for the football, how some televisions really don't work with that colour. It's an interesting look. Is it all of a sudden we're starting to block certain colours on television now? I hope not. It shouldn't be a problem, and especially as we have a little bit of orange on ours, so it could make a difference. We need some feedback, and you can actually win a prize. And the other thing is, we need more members. I did a call 2 years ago at the Benelux, and I said, if one of us just gets one member, think how many members we are. If we get two, and are so unlucky maybe to get three, think how many members we become. This industry has made it interesting for all of us. We wouldn't turn up here today to listen about streaming, AI, and going through a whole day of this. But I hope the knowledge you've got was worthwhile. So, Scan is also on your sides. Melissa has been so nice to put it all there as well. Join us, become a member. You also have the ability to join us on the executive team. That's quite fun as well, if you really get into that. It's worthwhile. Thanks to all of today's speakers, moderators. You've done really well. You kept us nearly on time. We're actually half an hour ahead of time. So, unfortunately, that means there's an extra half an hour of networking upstairs. I know, I'm sorry. Thank you to the sponsors, Vesima, Nokia, and Bridge Technologies. Without you, things do change a bit. So, I hope you've all enjoyed today. Enjoy the networking. Give us all the feedback, what we've done well, what we should change. We can take it, just be nice.
Be nice.
Be nice. Thank you all very much.